The black woman had just emerged from the waterfall, froze when she saw her boss standing there. Zariah clutched the towel, breath snagging in her chest. Cold water slid down her shoulders like a warning. Cassian halted. He looked away, apology rough in his throat. The forest held its breath. He wrote the rule that banned office romance. Now he had to protect her dignity with his restraint. Power met privacy, and neither moved. She dressed with wet hands, heat burning under the chill. A twig cracked somewhere unseen. A lens could be watching. A rumor could be loading. Zariah fastened the last button and lifted her chin. "You can turn around," she said. He faced her, composed, but the set of his shoulders trembled. The moment had already changed everything. In minutes, a photo could detonate. A board could judge before hearing. Hearts could break, or a standard could be born. Stay with their story. See whether they choose gossip or truth, image or integrity. If this opening feels honest, follow the channel and keep watching. Your call. Hours before the waterfall, the limousine pulled away from Atlanta and climbed into the Blue Ridge Mountains. Zariah sat near the window, palms damp, watching the city melt into long stretches of green. She was the youngest employee invited to the Aurelian Lux Group retreat. Pride warmed her chest, yet pressure pressed just as hard. Across from her sat Cassian Holt. His posture was exact, his focus unbroken. He did not glance up from his tablet once. His silence cut sharper than any question. Zariah straightened her spine. If she wanted a place among leaders, she had to earn it with her voice and her work, not her nerves. She rehearsed her talking points in her head, metrics, markets, projections, then pushed a breath through her teeth. The limousine turned. The air felt thinner. She looked up again and met Cassian's brief, cool nod. Not approval, only acknowledgement. But even that felt like a test. She told herself she would not shrink. Not today. Not in front of him. When the car finally stopped at Haven Ridge Summit, the world looked unreal. Pines lined the sky. Wooden beams gleamed in the sun. The air smelled clean, like the earth itself had exhaled. Zariah stepped out and let the breeze steady her thoughts. She whispered a promise to herself. She would prove her worth here. No shortcuts. No fear. Then she saw Cassian again. He crossed the courtyard, surrounded by vice presidents who hung on his every word. His presence pulled the space taut. It reminded her of late nights at headquarters, when she stayed long after others left, chasing perfection because he expected nothing less. But pressure was not what she needed now. She needed air. She needed room to breathe in a place where no one measured her. And that was why the narrow trail caught her eye. It led away from the conference halls and into the forest. She hesitated only a moment before choosing it. A moment for herself, she thought. Just one. The trail dipped into quiet. Birdsong threaded through the trees. Sunlight struck the path in soft gold. Zariah followed the sound of rushing water before she even realized she was doing it. Something about the pull of it felt like relief waiting to happen. When she reached Ravenvale Falls, she stopped. The water poured down a stone wall into a clear, glassy pool. Mist curled through the air, cool against her skin. No voices, no footsteps, no executives calling her name. For the first time since joining ALG, she felt alone in a way that did not hurt. She felt free. The day had been heavy, and her body needed the cold shock of water more than she wanted to admit. She checked the trail once more. No movement, no shadow, no one who could judge her. She stepped out of her clothes, folded them on a flat rock, and eased into the pool. The cold hit fast. Then it softened. For a few perfect minutes, there was only water, breath, and the quiet she had been chasing for years. When she rose from the water, the world shifted. Zariah gripped her towel, heart lurching. Cassian stood at the edge of the clearing, frozen mid-step. Shock flickered across his face, sharp and unguarded. Everything inside her locked. Her throat tightened. She whispered, "Please, turn around." He obeyed at once. No argument, no hesitation. His hand caught a branch as if he needed something solid to hold himself still. The space between them thickened. Authority met vulnerability in a single breath. He had written the company's strict ethics policy. Now he stood in the forest fighting every instinct, his own and hers, to respect the line he swore never to cross. Zariah's pulse hammered. The falls roared behind her. The moment felt too vivid, too bright. She wrapped the towel around herself and stepped toward her clothes with careful, trembling hands. Cassian said nothing, but the effort in his silence told her more than words ever could. Something had cracked open. Something neither of them could undo. Zariah dressed with wet fingers that refused to move fast enough. Fabric clung to her skin. Her breath stuttered as she tried to gather herself. Behind her, Cassian kept his gaze fixed on the trees, shoulders held in rigid control. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. The words were steady, but the strain behind them was clear. "It's fine," she replied, though everything in her felt anything but fine. She fastened her skirt and smoothed the front with shaking hands. When she finally said, "You can turn around," he faced her. His expression was composed again, but not untouched. There was a flicker, a question, a conflict that had never been there before. They stood with several feet between them, and yet the air felt charged. Not with danger, with awareness. It was the smallest moment, barely a breath, but it hinted at something she did not want to name, something that could unravel everything she had built. As they walked back toward the resort, neither spoke, neither had to. The shift between them walked too. Morning came with the scent of coffee and tension. Zariah entered the lodge dining room and felt the room assess her in an instant. Executives murmured over pastries and profit charts. She kept her posture tall, even as nerves stirred under her skin. Marla Voss glided toward her with polished confidence. Her smile was thin, practiced, and sharp. "Not everyone thrives at leadership retreats," she said. "Some find the pressure overwhelming." Zariah met her gaze without flinching. "I'm managing just fine." Marla's eyes narrowed a fraction, as if surprised the younger woman didn't fold. The exchange lasted seconds, but it hit like a spark on dry ground. Zariah felt old whispers shift. Eyes followed. Assumptions wrote themselves in silence. She refused to shrink. Not in front of anyone here. When she moved toward the buffet, she felt Cassian's presence before she saw him. Straight-backed, controlled, observing more than he let on. And for the first time, she wondered whether Marla's comment had been aimed at her success, or at something Marla thought she saw. Cassian approached, his expression unreadable. "Zariah," he said, "I want you to present your European expansion proposal this afternoon." The room shifted. Conversations dipped. Heads turned. Marla's eyebrows lifted in a sharp arc. "Interesting. I wasn't aware she was involved in that project." "You are now," Cassian replied. His tone was calm, but its edge was unmistakable. Heat crawled up Zariah's neck. This was the opportunity she had dreamed of, yet Marla's stare cut like a blade. Jealousy, suspicion, a narrative forming without her consent. Zariah steadied herself. She deserved this chance. She had earned it through late nights and relentless work. Still, she felt the air thicken around her as though the entire retreat now watched for any sign of imbalance. Marla leaned closer. "Big projects bring big expectations. I hope you're ready." "I am," Zariah said, voice level. She was ready, but she also sensed that this presentation would ignite more than professional debate. Something else was rising, and she had no idea how far it would spread. Afternoon light filtered through the conference hall as Zariah stood before the screen. Her slides glowed behind her. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She inhaled slowly and began. Her voice steadied with each sentence. Market data, cultural insights, brand strategy. She laid out her vision piece by piece. Executives leaned forward. Even skepticism softened. Then Marla struck. "Your projected margins seem optimistic," she said. "Can you support that claim?" Zariah opened her mouth, but uncertainty flickered. The room shifted again. Caleb North stepped in. "Her numbers hold. We ran the model twice." His tone carried weight. Several heads nodded. Confidence returned to Zariah like breath. She continued, stronger than before. By the end, the room was no longer questioning her. They were impressed. When she finished, a quiet pride rose in her chest. She had held the line. She had proved she belonged. But she also sensed something else. Cassian watching with a focus that felt more personal than professional. She wasn't sure what that meant. Not yet. After the presentation, Zariah retreated to her room, heart still racing. She replayed every moment, every question, every glance, every beat of pressure. Relief mixed with adrenaline. A knock interrupted her thoughts. 2 firm taps. She already knew who it was. When she opened the door, Cassian stood there. His expression was composed, but tension simmered beneath it. "We need to talk," he said. Her pulse jumped. She stepped aside, but her mind raced. Talking alone with him carried risk. Talking after the waterfall carried even more, but running from hard things had never been her way. She faced challenges. She didn't hide from them. "Come in," she said. He entered, but kept distance between them. The silence felt charged, as if both were afraid to touch it. "There's something I should have said sooner," he began. Her breath held. Every path from here felt dangerous. Still, she chose honesty, chose to stand. "Then say it," she replied. "I'm listening." Cassian stood still after her words, as if choosing each breath. "I've been trying to bury what I feel," he said. "For months." His voice was low, almost strained. "I kept telling myself it was respect for your talent, nothing more." Zariah felt heat rise under her skin. "You wrote the policy," she said, "the one that bans this exact situation." "I know," he replied, "and I followed it. I tried to." The air tightened between them, rules on one side, truth on the other. "You're my CEO," she said softly. "Anything between us could cost both our careers." His jaw flexed. "I would never risk your future. That's why I said nothing." For a long moment, the room held both of them in a fragile balance. Emotion pushed forward. Discipline pushed back. "If we cross this line," she whispered, "we don't get to pretend it didn't happen." Cassian met her eyes. "I crossed it the moment I realized I cared." Her pulse stumbled. Nothing about this felt simple anymore. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. The vibration rattled through her palm. Messages stacked in rapid bursts. Her stomach dropped. She opened one. A photo. Cassian entering her room. Time-stamped. Circulating. Her breath caught. Another message arrived. Then 3 more. She looked up at him, fear flaring behind her ribs. Someone sent this to half the retreat. A knock echoed down the hall. Not gentle, not patient. Marla stood in the doorway with a blade-thin smile. "Well," she said, "this is unfortunate." Zariah felt shame and anger twist together. Her reputation, her work, everything she fought for was now framed by a single image. "You wanted attention," Marla added, "and now you have it." Cassian stepped forward. "Enough." But the damage was already moving through the resort like wildfire. Whispers, screens, judgments. Zariah's pulse thudded in her ears. Someone wanted to destroy her future. And they had just fired their first shot. Zariah steadied herself. Fear cooled into clarity. "Metadata," she said. "Every photo has it. If IT checks the file, they'll know whose phone took it." Marla's smile faltered. Just a flicker. But it was enough. Cassian's voice hardened. "You invaded our privacy. You distributed it. That alone violates company policy." Marla scoffed. "You can't prove I took anything." "We can," he said, "and we will." His words struck like a gavel. Authority reclaimed its ground. Marla opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The power she expected to wield had slipped. "You are suspended," Cassian continued. "Effective now. Security will escort you until the investigation is complete." Her shock twisted into rage. "You're protecting her." "I'm protecting the company," he said, "from misconduct." Zoraya stood silent, but inside something steadied. She had been cornered, yet she refused to break. Marla shot her one last glare before leaving. When the door shut, the room felt brighter. For the first time, justice belonged to Zoraya. Silence settled after Marla's exit, heavy but honest. Cassian exhaled as if dropping a weight he'd carried too long. "This will spread," he said. "There's no hiding it now." "I know," Zoraya replied. "So let's not hide." Her voice surprised even herself. Clear, steady, true. "If we pretend this never happened," she continued, "they control the story. If we face it, we take it back." Cassian studied her. Something like respect, deeper than before, moved behind his eyes. "We go to the board," he said slowly. "We tell them everything." "That's the only way," she answered. It was the hardest path, the one where both could lose everything. Yet it felt right. No secrets, no shadows, no whispers waiting to poison their names. "We return to Atlanta tonight," he said. Zoraya nodded. Fear still pressed against her ribs, but conviction steadied her spine. For once they were choosing truth over comfort, integrity over ease. And both knew there was no turning back. The drive back to Atlanta was quiet at first. City lights crept nearer with every mile. Trees thinned, roads widened. Their world shifted from isolation to consequence. Finally, Cassian reached across the seat. His hand found hers. Not romantic, steadying. "We need a plan," he said. "Yes," she replied. He outlined his first step. "I'll recuse myself from every decision involving you. No gray areas, no excuses for them to claim favoritism." Zoraya breathed in. "That protects the company, and it protects me." "It protects us both," he said. They discussed timing, disclosure, oversight. Every detail felt like armor they were building piece by piece. The closer they came to the city, the heavier the risk became. Careers, reputations. Everything could tilt in one meeting. But Cassian held her hand with quiet resolve. "No matter how they judge this," he said, "I want my actions to be transparent." "And I want mine to be mine," she answered. For the first time, they were choosing courage together. Later that night, Zoraya stood outside Cassian's penthouse with her heart in her throat. She had gone home, tried to sleep, failed. Questions chased her until she found herself here. When he opened the door, surprise flickered into relief. He stepped back, letting her in without a word. She spoke first. "I can't pretend I'm not scared." "So am I," he admitted. "But fear doesn't mean we're wrong." The honesty softened something inside her. They sat across from each other, the city glowing behind them. No touch, no assumptions, just truth laid bare. She told him about the pressure, the whispers, the weight of fighting alone. He told her about expecting perfection from himself, about loneliness hidden under authority. "You matter to me," he said. "Not because of your work, because you exist." Her breath caught. Not from romance, from being seen, fully and without agenda. "I care too," she said. "But we need to do this right," he nodded. "Then we will." The promise settled between them, steady as dawn. Morning broke with pale light and a hard truth. Today decided everything. Zoraya and Cassian walked into Aurelian Lux Group side by side. They didn't touch, didn't speak, but the unity in their steps was undeniable. Employees paused. Conversations halted. Eyes followed them down the hallway. It felt like entering an arena, but neither flinched. At the elevator, Cassian glanced at her. "We stand together," he said. Zoraya inhaled. "Yes, we do." The doors opened to the executive floor. The air felt colder here, sharpened by judgment. She walked a half step behind him. Not from fear, but from strategy. She wanted no rumor that she used his status for shelter. She carried her own weight. Whispers rose as they passed. Some curious, some cruel, some almost sympathetic. But Zoraya kept her chin lifted. This was her life, her career, her truth, and she refused to let anyone distort it. When they reached the boardroom doors, her pulse steadied. It was time. The boardroom was already full. Graham Alder sat at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone. Other members watched with folded arms and guarded eyes. Cassian spoke first. "I have a personal matter to disclose." His tone didn't waver. "I am in a relationship with Zariah Vale. There has been no favoritism, no breach of policy, but we are bringing it forward before speculation does." The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Words like optics, conflict, reputation, shareholder risk flew across the table. Zariah stood silent beside him, hands clasped, letting the storm break over them. One director demanded, "How do we protect the company from this?" Cassian answered, "With honesty, and with strict boundaries I am ready to enforce on myself." Another countered, "Ethics must be absolute, not selective." Graham raised a hand. Silence dropped. "We will hear Miss Vale next," he said. Her pulse kicked. This was the moment she had feared, and the moment she needed. Zariah stepped forward. Her palms were damp, but her voice held. "I crossed emotional lines first," she said. "I admired him. I respected him. But I never sought advantage. I never accepted special treatment. And I would never let feelings compromise my work." Some faces softened. Others hardened further. "I understand the concern," she continued. "A young employee, a CEO. The power dynamic is real. That's why I want safeguards. Move me out of his reporting line. Increase oversight. Hold us accountable to results, not assumptions." A murmur moved across the room. This was not the plea they expected. It was ownership. It was truth. "I earned my place here," she said, "not through him, through my work, and I'll prove it every day if you let me." Her voice tightened at the end, not from weakness but conviction. She had told them exactly who she was. Now the choice was theirs. Before anyone could respond, Marla, reinstated only for this meeting, leaned forward. "This is a scandal," she said. "Fire them both before it spreads." Zariah felt the words hit like cold steel, but she didn't flinch. "If removing the power dynamic is your concern, then take me out of his chain. Let me report to someone else and monitor everything." The board shifted. It was a clean solution, strategic, measured, hard to refute. Marla scoffed. "That won't fix the optics." "It fixes the ethics," Zariah replied. Cassian added, "And I support every safeguard she named." The room quieted. A practical path now lay before them, one that protected the company without destroying two careers built on real work. Even those who doubted her had to acknowledge the logic. She had not begged. She had not folded. She had offered the one thing corporations value most: structure. And for the first time, Marla looked less certain of her victory. The room held its breath after Zariah's proposal. Then she stepped forward again, voice steady. "If my presence threatens the company," she said, "I will resign." The words cracked the air. Cassian reacted before anyone else could speak. "If she leaves," he said, "I leave as well." Silence hit like a shockwave. Board members looked from one to the other, stunned. Zariah's chest tightened. She hadn't planned for him to sacrifice his career, not for her. "Cassian," he shook his head, "I meant every safeguard she offered, but I won't let her stand alone, not when I'm equally responsible." The board shifted, unsettled. Losing a rising talent was one thing. Losing their CEO, the architect of their recent growth, was another. Graham Alder's jaw clenched. The stakes had changed. This was no longer gossip, no longer optics. It was two reputations laid bare, two careers on the line, and one truth neither of them could take back. The room had to respond, and respond soon. Before the tension could break, Caleb North rose from his chair. Calm, precise, respected. "I need to clarify something," he said. "Cassian is harder on Zariah than anyone here. He pushes her more, expects more, demands more. If that is favoritism, it is the strangest version I've seen." A few quiet chuckles rippled, reluctant but real. But, more importantly, Caleb continued, her European expansion campaign is the best proposal we've reviewed in 5 years. Several heads turned. That statement carried weight, financial weight. If you remove her, he said, you lose the strategist behind a projected revenue surge. If you lose him, you lose the leader who scaled this company to where it stands now. There is no gain in sacrificing either of them, only loss. The board absorbed his words. Numbers spoke loudly here, results even louder. Zariah felt gratitude press behind her ribs. Someone was finally defending the truth with data, not fear. Caleb sat. Judge their work, he said, not the whispers. A director leaned forward. We hear the emotions, we hear the defense, but how do we trust your judgment going forward? Zariah answered before Cassian could. Her voice was calm, measured. By holding us to what we produce, and by enforcing structural boundaries that remove any conflict. She continued, this isn't about emotions, it's about governance. You don't have to trust our intentions, you only have to trust the systems we're agreeing to follow. Another director nodded, intrigued despite himself. If I report to someone else, she said, and if Cassian recuses himself from every decision connected to me, then results, not relationships, drive everything. She paused, letting the shift land. This stopped being a rumor the moment we walked in here, she said. Now it's a choice. Do we let fear shape policy, or do we rely on structure and accountability? It was not a plea. It was a reframing. Clean, logical, impossible to dismiss. For the first time, the room felt less hostile and more thoughtful. Graham called for a 30-minute recess. Chairs scraped, papers shuffled. The board filed out in a tense line. When the doors closed, the hallway fell silent. Only the hum of distant elevators broke the stillness. Zariah leaned against the wall, breath uneven. Her hands trembled, not from regret but from the enormity of what they had just risked. Cassian stepped beside her. He didn't touch her at first. Then, gently, he rested a hand on her shoulder. No matter what happens, he murmured, I don't regret this. The words loosened a knot inside her. She exhaled, soft and shaking. Do you think they'll accept it? She asked. They have to choose what protects the company, he said, and truth protects it better than fear. She let her head fall back against the wall. For a moment, the world felt still. Not safe, not certain, but honest. Whatever verdict waited behind those doors, they would face it together, and that thought steadied her more than anything else. When the board reconvened, the tension felt different, tight, but decisive. Graham Alder stood. His expression was firm, but not cruel. After deliberation, he said, the board is willing to accept your relationship under specific conditions. Zariah held her breath. First, Graham continued, Zariah will report directly to Caleb North, effective immediately. Second, both of you will complete formal ethics training. Third, all disclosures will be transparent. Fourth, for 1 year, every interaction with potential conflict will be monitored. The conditions were strict, heavy, but fair. And if these terms are followed, he said, you both remain with the company. Relief rippled through Zariah so sharply it almost hurt. Cassian's shoulders eased just slightly. This is not leniency, Graham added. It is accountability. Zariah nodded, accepting the weight with gratitude. A year under the microscope would not be easy, but it meant they could keep their work, their dignity, and the truth they had fought for. It was a victory, one that cost them but did not break them. Before anyone could process the decision, Marla pushed back her chair with a sharp scrape. Her eyes blazed. This is absurd, she snapped. You're setting a dangerous precedent. Graham didn't react. You may accept the ruling or offer your resignation, he said calmly. Marla's lips twisted. Fine. Then I resign. And when this blows up in your faces, remember who warned you. She stormed out, heels striking the floor in furious staccato. No one followed her. No one tried to stop her. The silence that remained said everything. Zariah let out a slow breath. She hadn't wanted revenge, only fairness. Marla's exit wasn't triumph. It was relief. Clean. Final. Cassian glanced at Zariah and she caught the quiet respect in his eyes. She had survived the worst of the accusations without bending. The board moved on. Conversations resumed. But the air felt lighter now, as if a long shadow had finally lifted. For the first time, the path forward felt possible. News spread within hours. Headlines bloomed across business sites. Social media erupted with opinions. Some kind, some cruel, some obsessive. CEO admits relationship with junior employee. Ethics or emotion? Aurelian Lux under pressure. Through it all, Zariah and Cassian answered every inquiry with the same calm clarity. Nothing hidden, nothing defensive. Transparency became their shield. Reporters asked if she earned her promotion. She said, "Ask my results." They asked if he broke rules. He said, "No," and now the rules are even stricter. Public scrutiny was messy, but their consistency held. Slowly, critics softened. Supporters spoke louder. The company's reputation didn't collapse. It adapted. It evolved. And Zariah discovered something surprising. Integrity under fire can be its own kind of power. Not everyone approved. Not everyone would. But she no longer shaped her life around whispers. She and Cassian faced the noise together, and the world, loud as it was, could not drown them. 3 months later, numbers told the story better than interviews ever could. Zariah's European expansion launched with uncommon force. Sales spiked. Engagement grew in every market. Aurelian Lux broke into regions once considered unreachable. Executives who once doubted her now quoted her strategies in meetings. Analysts praised the campaign's precision. In quiet moments, Zariah let herself feel the pride she once feared to show. She had not survived the scandal, she had excelled beyond it. Caleb congratulated her with a rare smile. "You earned every bit of this," he said. Even Graham acknowledged her results during a quarterly briefing. "Innovation doesn't come from fear," he said. "It comes from courage." And though Cassian kept his distance in public, his eyes always held the same steady pride. Work had not saved her reputation. Her work had proved it. Success spoke for her louder than any rumor ever could. 6 months after the board meeting, they returned to Ravenvale Falls. Autumn leaves framed the water in shades of copper and gold. The air felt cooler than before, but gentler too. Zariah stood at the edge of the pool, remembering the fear that once lived here. Now, only peace remained. Cassian stepped beside her. "Do you remember what I said back then?" he asked. "You said you'd never look at me the same way," she replied. He nodded. "I was right, but not because of that moment, because of everything you showed me after it." He took her hands. "Beauty opened the door," he said softly. "Your courage kept it open." Her breath trembled. He dropped to one knee. A small velvet box opened in his palm. "Zariah Vale," he said. "Will you marry me?" Tears rose fast, warm and unstoppable. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." The falls roared behind them, the same place that once threatened to break them, now blessing what they had fought to protect. A year later, sunlight spilled across the courtyard of the Aurelian Lux headquarters. Guests gathered among white flowers and tall glass windows. Zariah walked down the aisle with calm steps and a full heart. When she reached Cassian, the world softened into something simple and true. Graham Alder raised his glass during the reception. "When Cassian first told us he was in love," he said, "I thought he'd lost his mind. But he didn't. He found his heart and reminded us that leadership is human first." Laughter and tears blended in the crowd. As Zariah and Cassian shared their first dance, colleagues, now friends, watched with warmth instead of judgment. Their journey had proven something rare. Money grows with trust. Reputation grows with truth. Life grows with dignity. Love grows when people choose it. And self-worth grows when you refuse to shrink. If their story touched you, share it with someone who believes in courage, and follow the channel to join the next journey.